Hi everyone, Ernie Tech here, and I have something really special for us. Something I am tickled pink, definitely tickled this color to provide, and that is a video that was graciously created for us for our channel, my channel. I'll call it our channel because it really is our channel, by none other than Dr. René Ferland, who is a retired professor at the University of Quebec in Montreal, a mathematician, someone who is very active in the VM370 community edition world and in mainframe emulation in general. And he has been kind enough to produce a video on VM370 and others, a couple of others to follow, in fact. He's been showcased on Moshix's channel, very generously provided this video to us to learn and enjoy. So grab your favorite mug, you know which one I choose, and your favorite beverage, I choose my Tim Hortons coffee, and sit back and relax and enjoy the video.
I promised you a video, so here it is. I'm recording this in one shot on my Macintosh. So allow me to make some mistakes along the way and maybe to cough sometime, hopefully not too many times. So for starter, I would like to go with you through some pictures that show the different hardware components of a mainframe in the 1970s, because VM370 is directly connected to these. So just to recall a little bit what was a mainframe at the time, you know, this is a System 370 model 145. That's the box over here. And beside it, you have a 3215 terminal, a printer or typewriter terminal, and that was used to operate the mainframe. But of course, it was not all of it. Usually at the time, there was also a card reader, something like that. This is a 3505. I remember using that kind of device myself when I was a student, and there was a card punch like this. And there were, of course, printers, line printers like this one, to print the output of jobs and stuff like that. And then there were discs. The VM370 is set up on 3350 DASDs, so this is the model at the time. And there were tape drives also. This was a 3420. And finally, of course, to interact with the mainframe in any way, we needed terminals of different kinds. And typically, a terminal of the 3270 family, like this one. This is model 3278, I believe. I didn't work with that kind of model exactly. It was a different kind of model, not very far from this, but I remember a big room full with these terminals. They were connected to not a printer, a controller, and that controller was also connected to the mainframe, okay? So these were the components, the hardware components of a mainframe, and these parts like this were typically in a computer room, which nobody could access anyway. And of course, the terminals were in different rooms on the campus, I remember, where you could sit and work with it. So this was a mainframe at the time, and that's the kind of stuff that Hercules will emulate in general. So what does Hercules do with this? Let me hide this and come here. The computer itself, the mainframe, is emulated by Hercules. The console that we saw by the side of the mainframe on the picture, we will use a window, a command window, and make a telnet connection to Hercules, and that will give us the console. The card reader, the card punch, and the line printer, Hercules will use ASCII files for those. The DASDs will be files on the host too, but they're different, a special kind of file with a special format. And tape drives also. Tapes files will have a special format, and Hercules will provide the tape drive facility or the tape drive feature if you wish. And of course, we also need terminal, 3270 terminals, and we use an emulator, a simulator, a terminal emulator like WC3270 to make the connection to Hercules. So that's how we emulate this whole thing, with Hercules. So that's fine. Now, what about VM370? Well, I just wrote it here. These are the components over there, Those are the components of VM370. VM370 has 4 components: CP, CMS, RSCS, and IPCS. IPCS stands for Interactive Problem Control System. It's a piece of software that was used by the IBM customer engineers to diagnose problems with VM370. And of course, it was not installed, I believe, on the turnkey anyway, and we don't need it in the end, so I'm not going to discuss about this. RSCS is the Remote Spooling Communication Subsystem. It's used for networking, basically, to connect remote job entry stations to the mainframe, or use VM370 as a remote job entry station. We can also use RSCS to establish network job entry between mainframes. I made a video on Moshix channel about that, but this is more advanced stuff, so I'm not going to talk about it now. And you too, if you ever come to that point, it's going to be a long time in the future, I guess. But what I would like to discuss most principally is CP and CMS. CMS is the Conversational Monitor System. It's an operating system. It's a single user operating system that's running in virtual machines controlled by VM370. I'll explain a little bit more. And CP is the control program, the most important part of VM370. Okay, so what is CP? It's what we call an hypervisor. It's a program that runs virtual machines, essentially. So this is not, well, at the time in the 1970s, it was pretty new. Today, we have programs like that. So just to make it easier to understand, I have installed here VirtualBox from Oracle, on my Macintosh. Maybe you know about that. This is a program that allows you to run virtual machines in which you will run an operating system like Linux or Windows. So it's like a piece of software that will run a small Linux for you, or an emulated Windows, because I'm on a Mac computer running Mac OS, but this program will run Linux inside, a virtual machine, and I can work easily with it. So that's an hypervisor, and CP is exactly like that. It's a program that will run virtual machines on the mainframe. Now, there's a difference between VirtualBox and CP, and the main difference is VirtualBox that you see here is a software running on the top of Mac OS, the operating system of the Mac. So between VirtualBox and the computer, there's a layer which is the operating system of the Macintosh. All right. However, in the case of CP runs directly on the mainframe. So there is no operating system between CP and the mainframe. Okay, CP runs directly on the mainframe. So by comparison, it's like VirtualBox would run directly on the Macintosh without Mac OS. Okay, so that's a little bit different, and that will result, in a different kind of operation, if you wish. Let me explain. Let me cough now. Now, what happens is that, how can I explain this? Suppose I want to use this VirtualBox here. I have these buttons here, and I also have menus from the operating system that I can use. So all these things are possibly provided by the operating system itself or the program as such. So if I want to configure a new virtual machine, so decide what kind of the size of the RAM, how many processors, what kind of video memory I have, what kind of control, graphical control, and everything. This is done with buttons here and stuff like that. So first of all, I need to specify the physical characteristic of my virtual machine that is going to be emulated or simulated, if you wish. And I need, sorry again, and I need buttons or some kind of controls to fix that, okay? But this is mainly provided by the operating system as far as VirtualBox is concerned, or the program itself. Now, when we are with CP, how can we say, I want to run a virtual machine of that kind of blah, 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 and I want to start that virtual machine, and I want to define the virtual machine because I don't have any buttons and no menus whatsoever. Now, CP does only one thing, is run virtual machines. So what it means is that anything I want to do with CP, I have to do with a virtual machine. So actually there will be a special virtual machine called operator, and that virtual machine will be used to control CP and typically start new virtual machines and control also the hardware of the mainframe. Because now, if a virtual machine, for example, want to print a file, if you have a virtual machine running CMS and you want to print a file, that file will be captured by CP, and we need to print it with a real printer, okay? So CP must be able to take the file that's been captured this way and send it to the printer. So CP is the one controlling essentially the hardware and running virtual machine. It must do this directly. As far as VirtualBox is concerned, part of the work, I guess, is done by the operating system, but in this case there is no operating system. So we need this special virtual machine called operator that's going to help us operate CP, basically, okay? But there will be other virtual machines involved with VM370. Enumerate them over here. There will be service machines. I'll explain what it is. There are also CMS virtual machines, and there are guests like DOSVS or MVS. So it will be possible to run a virtual machine in which the MVS operating system will be running. So that's having MVS under VM, that's what we say. Okay, so of course, when I come back here, you have all these components over there, USB, network, audio, storage, display system, blah, blah, blah. This describes basically the emulated computer, the small laptop or desktop that you emulate and which you're going to run the Linux operating system or Windows. That's because this Oracle, this VirtualBox program essentially emulates a laptop or something that resembles a laptop. But of course, CP is going to emulate not a laptop, but a mainframe, basically, a virtual machine that's going to run an IBM operating system, though that virtual machine will have virtual components similar to the real components of a mainframe. So there will be a console, there will be a virtual card reader, a virtual card punch, a virtual line printer, there will be DASDs, emulated DASDs, we call them mini-disc. Sometimes it's going to be dedicated DASDs directly, there will be emulated tapes and stuff like that, okay? So what it means is that when we're going to describe a virtual machine in VM370, it will have it will have typical components of a mainframe of that time. That is those I just mentioned, which is why I mentioned them anyway in the first place, okay? So let's do, at this point, let's try to start VM370, in fact, start CP, and see what happens. So there's something I need to do before showing you how to start the whole thing is the operator window, not window, but virtual machine, or this CMS virtual machine, or whatever virtual machine, you know, we have to start it and we have to run it. So we have to ask CP how to start the virtual machine. On this virtual box, there is this button here, démarrer, which is the French for start. So I select the virtual machine and I press this button. It's going to start the virtual machine, and not only that, it will boot the system. Now, there is no such button on CP, of course. So how do we start a virtual machine? Well, this is done with a logon. So what we do, we take a terminal, a 3270 terminal, we connect it to CP through a line known of CP, and we will get a logo. We clear the logo, and then we type logon with the name of the virtual machine. So when we do a logon on VM370, this is not a logon to a user under an operating system. It's not like doing a logon on MTS, a sign-on on MTS, or a logon on music. It's starting a virtual machine. That's different, okay? So to start a virtual machine, we need to connect the terminal and perform the logon command. And that terminal will become what we call the logon console. And this logon console is the way you're going to operate your virtual machine. The same way that this 3215 console allows you to operate the mainframe, the same way that this virtual machine operator here will allow you to operate CP, the logon console will allow you to operate the virtual machine itself. Okay, so let's do that. I'm going to cough again. It's because I just out of a terrible cough, and as a matter of fact, cold. Let me drink a little bit. So I'm going to start this thing, okay? So just to illustrate a little bit more, I made a few modifications to the turnkey just to make it more easy to explain. So this on the left is a Hercules window. That's where I'm going to emulate the mainframe, and on the right, that's a window where I'm going to make a telnet connection for the console, okay? So in other words, if I go back here, the left window here is actually this computer, and the right window will be this terminal over here, okay? So what I do, I start Hercules. So let me type this command. This will just essentially start the emulator, but it's not gonna start CP, okay? To start CP, what we have to do, well, on this computer here, you would choose over here, you know, I believe that's what probably what happened, but I'm not totally sure, but you would basically set the address of the disk or the DASD where CP is located. And once you have that, you press this button, blue button here, the load button, and that will load the CP into the mainframe and start it. And now, and as soon as this happens, there will be messages on this console, and that's what's going to happen here. So, of course, there is no button, so what I do IPL 6A1. 6A1 is the address of the disk where CP is located, and I'm going to start it or boot it or perform the initial program load. And I need to connect over here. See, so it happened while it was not connected, but that's fine. Okay, so what happened here, I made a connection, I got this message, system generated, free tab, blah, 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 you load the directory. The directory is the list of virtual machines available on the system. And then there is this auto logon of operator. Indeed, operator is a virtual machine. It needs to be logon, and the system will automatically log on that virtual machine. And what we see here in this window on the right, that's the logon console of operator, okay? And this is where I'm going to control the virtual machine operator itself, and I'm also control CP. That virtual machine is used for that reason. And the first thing that operator is going to do is to auto-log on another virtual machine called autolog1. And this is the first the service virtual machine that's going to perform kind of initializations of CP and the whole system. What it's going to do is to drain the unit record devices. It's going to attach, as you can see, DASDs to the system. These first two DASD are for the UTS, the Unix, AMDOL Unix that runs under VM370. Then you have the DASDs of DOSVS. And then guess what? It's going to auto-log on other virtual machines, CP Watch, CMS Batch, UTS, and Wake Up. Finally, it's going to start the unit record devices. Why does it do that? It's essentially saying CP, these guys are available and you can use them now. So if a virtual machine is trying to print, it's not going to get printed unless these guys are started, okay? Otherwise, it's just going to stay in the spool of CP. So you need to start them. All right, and when autolog1 has done all this, it's going to log off itself, and we don't need autolog1 anymore. Now, what about CP Watch, CMS Batch, UTS, and Wake Up? Well, CP Watch is a virtual machine to monitor CP. You can look what CP is doing with that machine. I'm going to show you in a few minutes. CMS Batch, well, that's a virtual machine to run batch jobs. Indeed, CMS is an interactive operating system. So you cannot run anything in batch when you use CMS. It's interactive, all of it. Okay, so you cannot send a job to the batch system like you do on MTS, for example. If you had the job on MTS, you can copy this to the batch system and it's going to run in batch in the background if you wish. But on CMS, you cannot do it. Okay, so how can you run job in batch? Well, you need a virtual machine to do that, and it's that's the CMS batch virtual machine. At some point, you might learn how to use it, or I may explain it to you. It's not very difficult. UTS is the virtual machine that runs the Unix system. And finally, Wake Up is a virtual machine to perform scheduled jobs. You know, it's a little bit like CRUN on Linux, or the scheduler, the auto sub, I believe, on Music SP or something like that. Okay, so that's what it is. Now, what can I do here? Well, I can do stuff with CP, like start these guys or explore what's up. For example, if I press enter and I say query DASD, I'm going to see all the disk to the system. There's a lot of them, as you can see. Some are connected to the system like this. Some are owned by CP. This is a different kind of DASDs. And you can check also query UR, unit record. You see there is a card reader, there's a punch, and there are actually two printers, one on 00E and one on 00F. They are distinguished by the class. You know, the class tells you what kind of files they're going to print. So when you print a file on a virtual machine, it will be assigned a class, which is essentially like a queue, if you wish. So if you have a file in class A, it's going to be printed by this guy, and if you have a file in class B, it's going to be printed by this. Okay, so now we have basically CP running in Hercules. Hercules is emulating the mainframe and running CP in it. And this is the console, the operating console. Now, sorry, we want to make a connection to start another virtual machine. So let me do that. And I modified the OSVS for that purpose. So let me show you. So this is a connection, a 3270 connection to VM370 on a line that is known by CP and controlled by CP. That's actually CP that provides this logo here. So I press enter, that will clear, and you can see below here CP read. So CP is waiting for you to do something. At this point, you can only do three things: log on, log off, or dial. Log on to start a virtual machine, log off to go back to the logo, and dial to dial a virtual machine. I'm going to explain a little bit later. So what I want to do now is log on to DOSVS, okay? So I'm going to do this. It's going to ask for a password. Fine. And then I have this message, log on, and that's it. And why? Because the virtual machine is running, but is executed or run by CP, but there are no operating system running currently. Why? Because actually with this virtual machine, you can run either the DOSVS virtual operating system or the CMS operating system. Now, this is the logon console, so I can operate or control CP for that particular virtual machine. So if I do query DASD, for example, this is going to be different than over here, because in here, it's going to tell me the real DASDs of the system. On the other hand, this is the emulated DASD, if you wish, of the virtual machine. There are, in fact, two sets of them. You have the DASD 360 up to 364. This is for the DOSVS operating system. And 190 up to 19E, that's for the CMS operating system. And the CMS operating system is on 190, and the DOSVS operating system is on 360. So now, if I want to start or IPL an operating system, I have to do pretty much the same thing that I do in Hercules. In Hercules, I did IPL with the address of the disk. So now I do the same. So let me clear this, and then I'm going to do IPL 360. This will start for IPL the DOSVS operating system. Now, apparently nothing happens, but that's okay. You can see down here running, the virtual machine is running the operating system. But now what do I have to do? I have to connect an operating system console to the virtual machine. That's because you have to distinguish between the logon console and the operating system console. The logon console controls the virtual machine, the virtual components of the virtual machine, and the operating system console is the console that controls the operating system. Okay, so now I need to connect a console to my virtual machine. This will be done with a dial. Okay, so of course I'm going to do this. Another, well, maybe not this one. Sorry, something like that. All right, I do this, but of course I don't want to do logon DOSVS again, because this would start the virtual machine. I don't want to start a virtual machine. I want to connect a 3270 to my virtual machine as an operating system console. So what I have to do is to dial DOSVS, make a connection. In a way, I'm going to connect a 3270 to the virtual machine. That's pretty much like starting a 3270 connection to Hercules. You know, when you run this on localhost port 3270, that's the equivalent here. That's pretty much the equivalent. Okay. Sorry. So I do this. He's answering that just dial on this particular address, which is the address of the console. And if I press again enter, I get this message, and he's asking me to provide the supervisor name. That's the kind of the kernel, if you wish. That's ASUP1 and 2. And then you say, give the IPL control. I'm going to do set DPD, then keep. And at this point, I just IPL the OSVS. It's running in this virtual machine, and this is the operating system console. Okay, I can stop the partition if I wish, do this, and then clear. And at this point, I can continue with the OSVS and work with it whatever I want. And I'm not going to do this, but I'm just wanted to show you that we have this logon console and we have this operating system console. Now, if I want, I can come back here and go back to CP like this. Sharp CP. This will escape. This will suspend the execution of the virtual machine and go back to CP. Okay, so CP read. If I want to resume, I just do begin, and now it's running. So CP. And at this point, I can do any kind of CP command if I want. And I can also just plainly stop completely the operating system and do something else if I want. I can do that. And I can define mini-disk and add to the system. I can do a different kind of, a certain set of command. Okay, so let me just get rid of the OSVS. It's suspended now. There's no danger in getting rid of it. So what I can do is just dropping this connection. I do that with reset 01F. You see it's going to drop. And I close this. Now I can not resume my... I could resume, I believe, the OSVS at this point, but I'm not going to do it. I'm going to IPL CMS instead. The other operating system. And now I get this, and here it is. So now I just stopped the OSVS, and I went back to CMS, okay? CMS is interactive, so you have this ready prompt here to type commands and do whatever, like there. So now, there's a difference here, as you can see, because before I had this logon console, and I had an operating system console which is separate. But as far as CMS is concerned, these two are the same. So when you run CMS in a virtual machine, the logon console is also the operating system console, which is actually an interactive system. Okay, the two are the same. So if I do query disk, this is a CMS command, and it gives that. If I do query -d, this is a CP command. This is not a command of the operating system, the CMS. Now, what will happen is that CMS will try to execute this. It will realize this is not a command I know, so it's going to send the command to CP, and CP will run it. Okay? So you can do both. That's why this CMS operating system is perfectly adapted and to run in a virtual machine under CP, because it knows about CP and it behaves in a coherent way with CP, if I can say. Okay, and of course, if I want, I can escape to CP and go to hell, CMS. I don't want to run this, and I'm gonna, I don't know, log off. And I could, of course, IPL 360 again. I can even, if I want, use this logon console as a operating system console. It's possible. Okay. For example, you can see if I type, it's going to ask for the supervisor name, but it's going to complain maybe a little bit later because the type of the console, the address is not the right one. But it's possible. Okay. But I can escape to CP again and maybe log off and stop the execution of my virtual machine. Okay. With CMS, I can also log on to CMS user, another virtual machine. This one runs CMS only. Okay, it's a virtual machine to execute CMS and play with CMS. And of course, there's a bunch of files that I left there, if you wish. For example, maybe I can do Fortran hello. That's going to compile the Fortran program. I can do load hello. That's going to load it into memory. Then I'm going to do file def 6 terminal. So I'm going to define the unit 6 as the terminal, and then I start the program, and I should get an hello world. Okay, that's one way to do it. There are many other possibilities here, but I'm not going to describe it. So just to show you. So basically, that's what I wanted to tell you with this video. Okay, so now maybe one last thing. You know, it's possible, for example, with CMS to have the logon console and the operating system console on the same window, if you wish. But it's possible to do the same with operator. It's possible to have operator and Hercules in the same window, exactly like we have with MVS, or even music, if you wish. So that's the way that the turnkey, I send it to you. So maybe I'm going to show you. Type, and then I'm going to shut down this guy. And I'm going to stop. I'm going to quit. I won't need this one. I'm going to modify the configuration file. So over here, I'm going to use an integrated console. Whoop, undo. Let's see, like this. And I'm going to move, it's duck, the run command over here. And then I do VM370. And now you see that it's going to automatically start the system. And what we see here, this is the output of the operator virtual machine. So now the console, the operating console of VM370 and the operating console of Hercules are merged together, and I can type a command like this, query -d, if I proceed with a slash. But if I don't, you know, about dev list, that's an Hercules command. All right. And now, if I want to shut down, I just do /shutdown, and because of the run command file, it's going to quit Hercules at the same time. So, of course, this is the way to start the whole thing very quickly, automatically, if you wish, using the Hercules automatic operator, basically, and an integrated console. And at this point, I can go here, for example, and log on to CMS user and start to work with CMS, the operating system. That's going to be interesting because these virtual machines, maybe I finish on this. What's interesting with VM370 is those virtual machines can talk to each other. So if you have VM370 running 5 virtual machines, I don't know, one CMS, one DOSVS, one MVS, CMS batch, you can have all these machines talking to each other, sending job from one to another, getting back the output of the job, and so on. From here, I could easily run MVS in one virtual machine and write a job in this CMS virtual machine and send it to MVS for execution and get back the output, and then ask to print the output from this virtual machine instead of making a TSO connection on the MVS. And as far as DOSVS is concerned, that's a batch system with no interactive interface. So it's pretty useful to have this CMS virtual machine, which you can use to send job to DOSVS and have the result back and examine it with the commands that are available on CMS. And a way you already explore, if you do help, you're going to get all the commands in the description. Okay, so I'm going to stop here now and just shut it down, the whole thing.
So I want to extend my sincere appreciation to Dr. Ferland for that wonderful video. And he's also graciously offered to produce a video on IBM's CMS system, the Conversational Monitor System. So I'm looking forward to that at a near future date. Anyway, go out and get yourself your favorite mug, fill it up with your favorite beverage, and come back for that. And I really appreciate your subscribing. If you haven't done so far, thanks for the wonderful comments. They've been outstanding. And that's it for now. Talk to you soon.